All right. Heading on into game number 2 in our No Buyout finals. We do see we've got a bit more of an interesting map this time, perhaps. Certainly enough hills to make things a little awkward for people. There is carbon available, but it's all very awkward. Nobody's really going to want to go scavenger with that. Iron, you've kind of almost got a similar situation. Look at how awkward this all is. All these high irons, there are 2 with adjacency with each other, but of course they're across this massive chasm. Realistically, only possibly usable by an expansive player. But that is something that needs to be considered this game. An expansive player founding in this general area, could get a lot of work done by claiming those quickly. Blues is in fact going to just take the 2 that are much closer. No adjacency for him, but that is still going to be a solid 4 iron per second. Everyone else, not really sure what to do with it, it seems. Waiting and waiting and waiting for their found location. These 2 tiles not being taken by anyone, it looks like. And Cubit is, in fact, going to be bold enough to go scavenger this game. He has a high and a low adjacency. That's going to be 4.5 carbon per second. Should certainly enough to be functional. Should be enough to be functional. And of course, taking that high aluminum. Soren, I wouldn't be surprised to see actually skip on aluminum entirely this game. I'm unsure about what he's done with his 3rd claim, though. See if we can find it. Is it? It was aluminum. Interesting. Aluminum was one of the more plentiful resources on the map, so it is a bit awkward to me to see that the scientific player has gone for 2 steel plus 1 aluminum instead of just triple steel this game. Especially considering iron looks like it could be a bit of a difficulty for, in particular, Gameslayer, who just chose to move straight into steel rather than taking any iron, and he is trying to rely on Blues keeping that iron price down in order to be able to make his money. And that said, that iron price is $30 right now. Blues was willing to hold on to it a little bit to delay his upgrade, it seems. Well, dropping almost immediately. You have to wonder what Cubit had to do with that as well. He is the kind of player who loves to manipulate the prices behind the scenes to the best of his ability. Wow. All right. That's aggressive. Cubit has actually sold out of his glass in order to secure this early geothermal plant, which is dangerous to my mind. It's a gamble of a play, for sure. He doesn't even have enough money set aside at this point to actually get that goon squad. He's almost there. He should make it before this geotherm comes online. You know it's going to be defended because it's a Cubit geotherm. He does this literally every game. He is far too scared to not use it, and just relying on new claims at this point in order to secure these additional sources of income in water and in this geotherm rather than pushing for an early upgrade. That's an aggressive move. It could work out well for him as the game pushes later and later, though, as he'll be more easily able to keep up with our expansive players in terms of number of claims they have available. That said, he will be possibly at a risk of falling out more easily if power were to ever get away from him, if his stock price were ever to just stay low, because he will be behind on stock price, possibly, from having those later and later upgrades. Let's see what everybody else has gotten up to in the meantime. Soren just putting down a couple of reactors and some steel mills. That's actually, Cubit's going to be overjoyed to see that, as it is going to be consuming, all these steel mills are just going to be consuming so much power. It's almost certainly played into the decision that Cubit made in order to go for those quick geotherms. That said, Blues and Gameslayer have also identified power could be a bit of a concern if they didn't react to it quickly. And so we do see that they themselves have moved into geothermal plants already. Steel, maybe not as valuable this game with so many people making it. It is possibly a nice decision to see. Soren, meanwhile, he's stuck with a solar panel during a dust storm. Not exactly the type of thing you want. However, this pipeline leak is going to work out so well for Soren. Makes it even harder for everybody else to get into his reactors by raising that water price so high. And on top of that, makes his reactors more valuable. So Soren, first to level 3, getting another nice little windfall from that very early shortage this game. Wow. That changes things a bit, especially on a map with 2 expansive players, a scavenger, and a scientist. That is going to be a valuable pleasure dome this game. We already see there's actually a pretty great location for it, with the laboratories at tool shops and offices all kind of staying off in their own little section. Wow. This is what virtual reality is worth, guys. Just keep that in mind. On a map like this, this is what this is worth to them. Now, Cubit, I actually have to seriously question this in a lot of ways. Whoa! Alright, far more reasonable a thing for Blues to do, I think. He has 72,000 debt now, but of course taking advantage. Oh man, and Cubit immediately responds by saying, fine, but I get that tile. Very understandable thing to do. There is still potentially going to be a good tile for Blues to utilize, but Cubit just making sure he can't have his pick of the litter. Committing an entire claim to that almost immediately. He can't even put down a Pleasure Dome yet. That's the thing. Pleasure Dome requires HQ level 3 these days. Some people forget about that sometimes. And so he will have to get to level 3 before he wants to actually utilize that claim. Definitely going to be a bit of a concern for him. Solar panel coming down for Blues as well. He's definitely going to be worried the rest of this game probably about the sheer amount of debt he took on in order to take virtual reality. That is definitely going to be a concern for him. Worth noting that Cubit was the one to take up our nice silicon tile. I don't think there were any other highs on this map, and in fact not a whole lot of silicon to go around. Still a couple of mediums that could be used for adjacency, and the medium that Gameslayer has, of course, with a nice plot of lows. So it's not like nobody's going to have access to it, but Cubit did definitely get the strong tile when it came to that. Soren just continuing with the reactors. He could easily move into farms as well if he gets to another upgrade, but Gameslayer is going to be the one to beat him to that. Already pushing through to HQ level 4, you can tell his resources are focused entirely around this concept. He has taken iron at this point. He has plenty of water gathered up in response to that early shortage. This will allow him to move into farms very easily, as we would expect. But also having all this glass, steel, and aluminum coming in just pretty much screams to the world, I want to upgrade. That's all I want to do. Cubit, despite not picking up virtual reality, is going to be the one to get down that Pleasure Dome quickly. And you can see already, like, look at this. Without virtual reality, this Pleasure Dome is making 240 a second. It's going to basically force the response now out of Blues to put down his own Pleasure Dome as fast as he can, which will be quite valuable for him, since he's the one with the virtual reality, but also will nicely cut into Cubit's profits. We do see that Soren, this electrolysis reactor, was in fact hologrammed, and was a patent lab. He's decided to take up teleportation for himself. An understandable decision. His founding location was certainly a bit questionable. Not great locations nearby, whereas he does have a nice source of electronics income later in the game if he wants to use it, or glass. Anything like that could work very, very nicely for him. Energy Vault. Once again, a valuable patent going up for auction. Soren's not going to like seeing those happen, but this one not nearly so much as virtual reality. Gameslayer is going to be the one to grab it on up. And just a nice little bit of extra power production. Never something to be upset about, certainly. You can see Gameslayer is in fact still leaking power. He took the one geotherm to shield himself from excessive debt, but he hasn't committed to another, or even a 2 or 3 yet. We do see finally another coming out. But that energy vault will just kind of help alleviate his current problems by generating extra power for him, by filling itself up. I mean, it's just a nice thing to have in general, no doubt about that. Cubit's sitting on an awful lot of cash right now. One has to wonder if he's actually looking to get aggressive, or if he's just planning to upgrade and trying to keep carbon awkward for everybody else. You can see he's holding on to a very, very large amount of it. I have to wonder if he's planning to use a hacker array with that. Wow, immediate response. Immediate response to these tiles being taken. Just bam, frozen. No, you are not putting down a farm, says everyone else in this game. A lot of people trying to move into farms already. So that was certainly dangerous for Cubit to do without the goon squad ready to go. Bit of a misplaced spy here, I would say. This is something you'll actually see a lot out of even high-level players, and it's inexcusable. Because this spy, it's right next to a hill, which basically guarantees its uselessness for this tile. Like, this tile can never be anything. This spy should have been positioned here, realistically. It would see all 4 tiles. It would see these additional 2 tiles where these expanded into. This spy only can see 3 tiles and only has the potential to see another, which isn't even adjacent, and so is likely to not be utilized the rest of this game, it's very much a wasted positioning on this spy. This is something all people need to watch out for. You'll see it all the time. Somebody wanted to see this tile, so they planted the spy here. Instead of, I want to see this tile, I'll plant the spy here. Took a little break for a moment just to watch out for that. Blues has decided already to get aggressive, hoping that other people will pitch in with him, and it looks like they're going to be encouraged to do so. Soren and Cubit both deciding, hey, let's pile on Gameslayer. Why not? This is actually a really nice play for Blues, as it kind of encourages, because you were the first to hit HQ level 5, Gameslayer. It's actually very, very simple. You can see Gameslayer rush to a position where he was completely undefended, and he was immediately annihilated for it by the rest of our players. I mean, there's that too. Gameslayer does kind of... He was the one in the lead, solidly. And he pushed too far with it. He pushed to HQ level 5. Blues instead first develops enough money to defend himself, then gets aggressive and defensive at the same time, encouraging everybody, hey, pile on this guy. Don't pile on me because I'm defending myself. Pile on him. It was a great play out of Blues. Gameslayer is going to be super salty about that for the rest of this match, as long as it continues, I suppose. And we'll just have to see where things go from there. Wow, overloaded. Overloaded pleasure domes. That's what you like to see when you're trying to make power. Oh man, 2 power a second for each of those. Not really what you want to see. Ooh, bad luck on the expansions for Blues. Great for Cubit though. Making more and more money from those habitats next to his base.
Should be proud of our guys.
Silicon being pirated away, no big surprise there. Blues, it is worth noting, has fully defended himself. He's not getting a whole lot out of Gameslayer actually being dead for the moment. But he did very nicely encourage everybody to eliminate certainly the strongest player at that stage of the game, which is, it's always just an interesting thing to see. Blues himself has managed to reach HQ level 5 as well. And once again, he's just in a position where he doesn't have to defend himself from here. He's free to do basically whatever he wants in continuing to upgrade, and he knows that the other 2 players are going to be a bit more wary of each other since their stock hasn't been completely secured yet. You can see Cubit, despite having hit HQ level 5 already, now he has to turn around and start securing his own stock. So he doesn't actually have that much of an advantage over Blues, if any. Soren, on the other hand, he is starting to look a bit threatening over here. He's got slant drilling, thinking machines, teleportation, and financial instruments. He did miss out on carbon scrubbing, unfortunately for him. Not really what he would have been looking for. Where are you going, Mr. Claim? I'm actually not sure. Oh, way down here. I have to call this a mistake. Like, he's getting carbon, I suppose, so maybe it's working out okay with the slant drilling. I would have rather seen him maybe go for carbon scrubbing earlier than he did to take it away from Cubit. I would have liked to see that very much. It's nice for the moment that his carbon is strong, and it'll work out, but like, all these decisions put together could have come to something much better. In the moment, it's fine, because he's paying down that carbon, he has that teleportation, but these tiles are just so far away. You can see how long it's taking this thing to even get there. Like, how long has this been flying through the air? That's absolutely insane. Would have much rather seen him maybe prioritize carbon scrubbing a bit more, especially knowing that Cubit is the player sitting on it, or sitting on the carbon. You can't trust that resource at all. So maybe that patent was a bit more valuable than the credit it was given this game. Water engine going to be nice for Cubit, certainly. He's managed to... Nope, not going to manage to pick it up for 9,000. Blue still undecided on exactly what it's worth to him. Nonetheless, reducing the cost of those blimps, now that they're so expensive these days, certainly going to be a nice thing to try and stay out of debt quite solidly. Definitely something Blues has to be concerned about, but Cubit is going to be the one to take up the water engine. So Blues already down in that B level of debt. You can see his stock price is being hurt by it pretty badly. Cubit managing to maintain the higher stock price right now. And things just... This is a really hard game to call from here, guys. Everybody got a slice out of Gameslayer as he went down, right? Blues definitely got the biggest slice, but not by a whole lot. So that is going to be a bit of a concern for him. And let's see, Cubit. Cubit's sitting on a lot of cash, though. That's what has to be said here. Cubit's just sitting on so much money. 100,000 right now. Not choosing to commit, it looks like, to anything super expensive. This isn't, in fact, a patent lab. It is just a hologram. I believe he actually scrapped a patent lab that was there and built a hologram. Now, all that cash said, Blues has managed to push to an Offworld. And neither of the other players has. Of course, we have Gameslayer, his subsidiary over here, being like, man, I hate everybody else making money. I'm just going to spite Pleasure Dome everyone. Which, oh, is just a little silly. Soren is, in fact, going to be the one to get aggressive. And I actually kind of like this decision out of Soren. He's encouraging Blues to buy into Cubit. He's encouraging Cubit to defend himself. All he had to do was buy this one little stock to provoke this reaction out of the other players, and now he can more easily commit to defending himself, commit to getting an off-world market online. Just that one little stock buy, forcing such a massive response out. He is, in fact, going to actually take a second one, hoping that Blues, I suppose, in turn, decides, all right, Cubit is suddenly the clear target. If I can knock him down, it'll be a lot easier than trying to go after Soren.
We caught a dirty rat trying to
certainly an interesting thought. It might work out well for Soren. Alright, the Offworld, we didn't really look at exactly what prices were too long, but you can see 630 for food. Certainly not a bad thing, although that food price is already getting a bit high. You can see that Blues is committing quite heavily to making efficient food production. He'll need to actually make food at some point along with that to get an advantage out of it. But I'm sure Blues has that in mind and will transition to it eventually. Also worth noting that we are seeing a lot of use out of the ice condensers this game, which I think is certainly a good decision. Everybody has secured at least a moderate amount of water separate from their base, but the people in the ice chose to relax on it just a little bit for the most part. Not go after the absolute best, but stay confident that the ice condensers would solidly defend them. Blues is actually once again in a terrifyingly strong position, and if these players can figure that out, they need to work together to kill him off. I think going after the victory yourself this game would be a bit of a mistake, even though it looks like that's what Soren has chosen to do, instead of focusing down the worrisome opponent that could lock you completely out of the series. Alright. Cubit also going after that improved food. He has a lot of improved water, maybe overcommitting to that a bit, especially considering ice was available this game. Overcommitting to that water on the research is definitely a bit of a concern when food is so much more important. You do see that Blues is really going to have to actually get food production up soon. He has it down, but it's all frozen. And so Cubit's just taking advantage of that, making absolutely sure that Blues cannot get the best launches that could be available to him. As a side effect, this is also giving Blues a lot of debt. You can see immediately selling out as these farms come online is Cubit.
Your stock is being bought.
No, whose stock is being bought? Blues stock being bought by Cubit. That is no big surprise whatsoever. You can see Blues sitting on so much debt. It is significantly impacting his stock price. And that is not going to be a pleasant thing for him at all. Now, the off-world market is still very, very strong, and I believe Blues is uncontested in having one. That said, he's also the only one that's vulnerable to the black market in such a massive way. A spy really probably should be on that tile. I'll be honest, I hate this thing that I can't, like, see easily through all of this. I don't think there's actually a spy there, though, by either player. Oh, here we see a spy from Cubit over in this area next to the market. And so it can tell that there's a goon squad there, but it hasn't gotten aggressive yet for any reason. He's not too concerned about shutting down the market. He seems more worried about dealing with the other tiles that are scattered about the map.
We're not surprised, just disappointed in you.
Everybody bought through to Gameslayer stock, which is an interesting decision to me. He has some amount of money, but not a truly massive amount. It feels like it's a very, very defensive move, trying to raise your own stock price in that faction, trying to get access to that extra source of income at the same time. But of course, Gameslayer's subsidiary isn't actually making all that much cash. It's not really moving tiles around all that much. It just doesn't have a whole lot of money. So I'm a little bit worried about exactly what that's going to be making this game. Dynamite and Dynamite onto the off-world market. I mean, that was 2 Dynamites right in a row. Was that both 2 off-world markets just getting hit by Cubit? I'm not even sure exactly when he put those up, but ow. That's all I have to say about that. Of course, tit for tat. Blues gets his Offworld Market knocked offline as well. This is, however, a pretty big concern for Cubit. He does have a little carbon production added to his own, which is nice to see. Or does he? No, is that... Yeah, Cubit should have extra carbon production at this point. Or no, these are very confusing, I have to say. It doesn't look like he's actually gotten to it just yet. He's heading into it, but he hasn't reached it yet. UI people, can we not do this, please? This is, like, not clear enough of a difference between completed and still ongoing. I'm just throwing it out there. So he will have extra carbon production soon. Should give him good access to an awful lot of cash once he's got it secured. But it's not quite there yet. The nice thing is, I'm actually really surprised here that we don't see a hacker array in particular out of Cubit. He's had access, uncontested, effectively, to carbon. As far as I can see, basically this whole game, I'm not seeing any of the difficult to spot black lines. It looks like the subsidiary is in fact the only other person who has access to that carbon. And it feels like hacking it could have been a pretty strong decision this time. So I'm a bit surprised that we didn't see that come to be. That double Offworld Market launching food is going to be very nice for Cubit at this point. You can see food is up to $740 value. So that is worth a ridiculous amount of cash, these two Offworld Markets. And I still am a bit concerned that for Blues, his debt is going to be the thing that overwhelms him and kills him. Meanwhile, Soren, he's made some progress. He's got his own Offworld Market online, which is great. But it feels like he is struggling to make money elsewhere. The glass furnaces are certainly nice to see. Those are going to be pulling in great money, although silicon, not all that much value from being on the silicon. Every little bit can certainly help. But I'm worried about these 4 tiles in particular. Like, look how blank they are. 4 tiles. That's basically an upgrade, right? That's an HQ level, just not being used. It's just worthless. On top of that, you've got this solar panel out in the middle of nowhere from the aluminum that he took at the start of the game. That's effectively 5 dead tiles. HQ level 5, gone for Soren. It just doesn't exist for all intents and purposes. And he's been struggling to use them effectively. Very much a concern. I do like that Soren is choosing to buy up. He had bought up an awful lot of water, was trying to hold on to it and elevate that price. Unfortunately, for him, I think his opponents just have, well, they don't have a whole lot coming in. It's realistically something he could have effectively done. But he did give up on it a bit early this game. I really don't actually understand him taking these tiles if he was planning on slant drilling late in the game. They're great water tiles, which is absolutely fantastic, but he had water tiles back home. I don't know if taking those tiles so far away from his base, yeah, teleportation, blah, 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 but he can't transition. And that's the big concern with these tiles so far away from your base. Just, oh, Soren. He's kind of relying on the other two to kill each other and then swoop in from behind to take the game at this point. And we'll have to see exactly how well that goes. These overloads not doing a whole lot. Not even testing for goon squads, really. It's just like a last-ditch effort of this is all I can afford to hit you with. Cubit almost got enough money to finish off Blues at this point. I think once these Offworlds launch, that is going to go ahead and do it. This one is frozen, which is nice enough for the time being, but this food's going to launch in just a moment. There is the red button. Cubit does bring down Blues and manage to secure a little bit of store in stock. Soren, meanwhile, he has D levels of debt. He has a lot of cash. No doubt about that. Soren has a lot of money. But Cubit's stock price is almost twice as high as Soren's. It's absolutely ridiculous. And Soren, he doesn't have enough money to press through immediately. He is going to need to acquire, let's go ahead and take a look, 665, 63, you get the idea, generally $650,000 to clean up this game. Whereas Cubit, he's going to need a lot too. Don't get me wrong. Do I want to do that math right away? Not really. 70 times, I mean, about, that may be as low as like $500,000, actually, to go ahead and clean up Soren in total. I think I've got my math right. I think around 500,000 to clean that up. Maybe closer to 6, but still very, very similar amounts. And one has to say, Qubit has a serious advantage when it comes to both subsidiary income and off-world income. On top of that, he is a scavenger and is able to utilize the black market as much as he desires. Not a whole lot of use for it right now, honestly. With things being so expensive, I wouldn't be too surprised to see it left to the wayside. But nonetheless, these double off-world markets and all the extra that he holds onto these subsidiaries, on top of that, as he buys into Soren still, he is going to continue to raise his own stock price. You can see it's already going to cost 700,000 for Soren to get this clean up. He commits to a dynamite, but I think Qubit's got this. I really think he does at this point. Soren has just fell apart for so long. I think these were electronics factories, then got scrapped, and then got built back into electronics factories. I think that's what actually happened to this game. Definitely a bit of a concern. All right. Just gonna enforce a little bit of the rules here, as it were. Game is basically cleaned up. Qubit is gonna take it, barring a catastrophe that a meteor strikes his house effectively. So we can start looking at the cleanup. I think Qubit just played into the late very, very well. 48K, yeah, was probably a bit too aggressive for the virtual reality, especially considering he took the virtual reality and then he led the charge on creating a subsidiary that was going to take a lot of that money away from him, because that's just how the AI functions these days. It loves to take money away from people with pleasure domes. It bothers me, quite frankly, but it is what it is. Qubit cleans up the game. Let's take a look at how he did it. It was very nicely done. You can see Qubit actually doing a whole lot of resource purchasing in that game. So he was manipulating prices effectively as the game went on. I think Soren just fell apart once again that game. Like, the decision to take these tiles was understandable, but it could have been played around. He could have ended up with these tiles instead and been a far more effective force that game if he had played things out just a little bit differently. These tiles I would also list as a definite mistake. Yes, having access to a high tile is better than a medium tile, but he already had the medium tile right next to his base. And once again, it's those transitions that matter so much in this context. Water is not going to stay high forever, especially on a map with this much ice. Definitely a thing to be concerned about. GameSlayer played it out very, very well at the start, but just got a bit too greedy in how he progressed through the game, opened up a vulnerability, and everyone in this game tore into that the instant it was seen. Like, just taking him out so quickly. And then Blue's debt was just what brought him down. That 48,000 just spiraled into eventually 144,000 in interest charges. Debt kind of brought Soren down as well, but if he had just played better in other places, it wouldn't have been as much of a concern. But Blue's over here. He ended up with some very, very big problems. I wish Final Debt actually was a bit more accurate. I don't think... Maybe Blues did finish with like 1,000 debt if he paid all of it down. I don't think that was the case, though. It might have been, but still, it cost him a whole lot of money to pay it down if it was. It was very well done. It's very well done by Qubit, actually. Definitely a return to form after last game where he just, in the late game, couldn't find an opening anywhere. It's not that they weren't there, it's just that Qubit couldn't find them. Let's see, once again, 26 black market uses, 5 claims. 5 claims picked up for an average of $10,000 a piece. That is absolutely fantastic, to be honest. $10,200 a piece, effectively. For those 5 claims, you can see that worked out so well for Qubit. Delaying his early upgrades, just kind of coming back into it with those engineering labs. If we go ahead and take a look at tech, we'll be able to easily see that he had a giant lead in that, 18 to 12 to 8. Definitely made a big difference that game when life support went out of control, that he was the one to come out on top. I would have liked to see a hacker array, certainly. I still maintain that. I think it would have been a very solid move considering the position he was in and the resources that he controlled. But clearly, he still managed to hold on. Also worth noting that Qubit did get a hold of an awful lot of patents that game. Superconductor, water engine, perpetual motion, cold fusion and carbon scrubbing, definitely contributing a lot that game, considering debt never turned into a problem for him. And you could see that that made such a huge difference relative to everyone else. Superconductoring this geotherm, certainly the right decision, even though his territory did end up looking just a little awkward in order to make it happen. All right, guys, that's enough talk. We've seen what we needed to. Let's go ahead and move on over to game number 3.